You may notice that it is a little bit dark in here today. I'm filming this after the sun has gone down. It's getting a little bit spooky because we're getting towards winter, and for that reason I thought today I would share with you some advanced knitting techniques that scare me. We're getting a little bit spooky, we're getting a little bit scary. These are some techniques that I've been really wanting to try but have been a little bit hesitant because I feel like they're going to be really hard. And so without further ado, let's get into it. The first technique that I'm really keen to try is Intarsia. And I think that is because there are so many cool designs that you can do. Once you free yourself from the constraints of strand knitting, you can pretty much do whatever design you want with Intarsia, and it's kind of crazy. One of the reasons why it scares me is I like to be quite organized and orderly when I'm knitting. I like to have all my balls of yarn in the right place, and I don't like things to be in a big mess. I like all my notions to be organized, and I feel like Intarsia is kind of the opposite of that. With Intarsia, you have to kind of just let the mess be a bit of a mess and just kind of hope that it'll all work out in the end. Well, that's what I can gather from the few tutorials that I've been looking at. So that is kind of why it scares me, but I think I want to give it a go. I have been looking at a few patterns that I think would be really good to get started with Intarsia. The first one I wanted to share was the Rachel Tee by Joanna Phillip. Now this one is probably the simplest type of Intarsia you're going to get. It's basically just big blocks of colour. The blocks of colour are on the arms and the neckline, and then there's just one block for the body. So I feel like this is the simplest form of Intarsia. I was actually kind of surprised when I saw this that this was Intarsia, because I would have presumed that you could just pick up for the sleeves with a different colour. And to be completely honest, I don't know enough about Intarsia to fully understand exactly how it works, but I'm very keen to try. I also just love this pattern. It's so 90s. The pattern is named after Rachel from Friends, who wore a similar t-shirt in an episode, and I just love this whole design, and I think it would be a really good intro to Intarsia. Another Intarsia pattern that I love is the Valley Cardigan by Laura Dalgard. Laura Dalgard's patterns are one of the reasons why I really want to try Intarsia. I think I will definitely give one of hers a go if I ever get around to it. This Valley cardigan in particular is a bulky pattern, so I feel like maybe it would be slightly easier or at least quicker to get through, and there's quite big blocks of colour, so I think it might be quite good for kind of getting to understand what you're doing, getting your head around it. And another maybe more complicated one is the Patchwork Cardigan, again by Laura Dalgard. I just absolutely love this one. Again, I don't know enough about Intarsia to know how complicated this would be to knit, but I love it and it just looks so good, and eventually one day I would love to knit this one. With any of these techniques, if any of you have actually done them or have any advice or are kind of masters of these techniques, please let me know. Any advice you have in the comments. I think it would be really useful for anyone else who is wanting to learn some of these techniques. The next one is stranded colour work, but with 3 colours in one row. I have knit stranded colour work now a couple of times. I have done the Hay Sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl, and I'm kind of about 3/4 of the way through my Rosy Sweater by Knit, and both of those are just 2 colour stranded colour work. And I'm very intrigued by how difficult it would be to throw in a 3rd colour there. And the reason I was thinking about this lately is because I've really wanted to start knitting socks. I've actually never knit socks before. I feel like I mainly just stick to knitting jumpers and vests and cardigans, and I haven't really explored too much around socks or accessories, to be honest. But I think this winter I really want to get into more of those accessories, and part of that has been looking at lots of different sock patterns, and I've noticed that quite a lot of sock patterns sometimes have 3 colours in one row. And one person that I'm thinking of in particular is Stone Knits. She has so many fun sock patterns. Personally, I don't know if I would actually knit these just because I don't know how wearable they would be for me, but I just love looking at them. They're so fun to look at, and I can kind of understand why people are obsessed with knitting socks because they're just so fun and so cute, and you could just like collect them. And for some reason I've just noticed 3-stranded colourwork seems to be quite common in socks, I guess because it's like a smaller canvas to kind of experiment. And I think because they're a lot of the time they're fingering weight, you can kind of get into some really like detailed designs with stranded colour work in a way that you probably can't do so much on like a larger scale project, because you just be knitting it forever and no one really wants to do that. So there's these You Silly Goose socks by Stone Knits. I just love them. And there's also these Herding Cow socks, again by Stone Knits, that do have 3 colours in one. I'm kind of intrigued of how I would hold that. Currently when I'm doing 2-strand colour work, I just hold 1 strand in each hand. So I guess I would just hold 2 strands in my right hand and 1 strand in my left hand, because I'm more confident knitting with my right hand, because I normally do flicking when I'm knitting just with 1 strand. So I think that's how I would do it. It does scare me because I feel like I would get confused about the colour dominance, and I feel like when you have 2 you can kind of remember which strand is going in which hand, but I feel like adding another colour into the mix would make it quite a bit more complicated. And also just having that many balls of yarn, especially if you had mohair and a strand of wool or something, you could end up with like 6 balls of yarn attached to your project, and I don't think I want to do that, so that kind of scares me. But maybe I'll give it a try with some socks, because I feel like at least they're a bit smaller. It's probably a bit easier to sort of manage all of that, because I guess you could use slightly smaller balls of yarn as well, especially if you weren't carrying one of the colours the whole time. So anyway, this is something that intrigues me and scares me, but I would like to try it at some point. If anyone knows of any interesting patterns that have 3 colours in one row, let me know, because Ravelry doesn't have a way to search for that specifically. You can search for stranded colour work, but you can't search for 3 stranded colour work. So if anyone knows of any, let me know. I would love to hear it. The next one that genuinely scares me is Brioche. The reason it really scares me is because by the sounds of it, it's really difficult to frog, and it sounds like you have to put a lifeline in pretty much, otherwise if you mess up you're screwed. And that kind of scares me, because I feel like with knitting, once you learn how to correct your mistakes, then nothing is really scary, because you know how to fix it. You know that if you do something wrong, you can just go back and it's fine. But with Brioche, if you mess up, you're kind of screwed. I kind of had a taste of this when I tried to knit my Daydreamers cardigan. I messed that up for many different reasons, but one of those reasons was I did mess up 1 row at some point, and trying to undo that, you can't just drop down like how you can when you're normally knitting. You can just drop down and pick it back up. It is not as easy to do, and I feel like Half Fisherman's Rib and Brioche are kind of similar as far as I can tell, just the way that you knit them is different, but I think ultimately the stitch that is created is the same stitch. Someone let me know if that's correct, because sometimes it's kind of, with these more advanced techniques, it's kind of hard to find information about it sometimes. There are way less videos on the different techniques available online, and so sometimes it can be a bit difficult to track that information down. So I feel like a good place to start with brioche patterns would be some accessories, and I think the neatness of it would look really good in accessories. I think just knitting like a plain brioche scarf could look really good. I've also found 2 patterns. One is the Olay mittens by Susan Mueller. These are so chic. They look like they're from the Row or something. Like, they look really expensive in my opinion, and I just love them. I really, really want to knit them at some point. I just think they look so fancy. And I think that's the thing with brioche, it's such a pretty stitch. It just looks like it kind of looks like it would be difficult to knit yourself. Like, it looks like something that you would buy in a shop because it's so fancy. And I think that's what appeals to me about brioche. There's just something about it. And then taking it to the next level, there's 2-color brioche. I guess that scares me even more. I found this pattern called the Brioche Ribbed Hat by Caitlin Barthold, and that is a 2-color brioche. I feel like a hat is kind of a low stakes project to practice this on, so maybe I'll give this a go. I'm not a big hat wearer, but I'm actually currently knitting the Musselburgh hat at the moment as a gift knit for my husband's birthday, and it's kind of turned me on to the idea of knitting a hat for myself. But I'm not the biggest hat wearer, so I feel like it has to be the right pattern, and maybe a brioche hat could be the answer. I don't know. We will see. The next technique that kind of scares me and kind of intrigues me is Entrelac. Entrelac. I'm not sure how you say it, but it is basically squares that connect together. And I watched a video of Nimble Needles explaining how this technique is done, and I think it kind of turned me off it a bit. Not, I love Nimble, nothing to do with Nimble Needles' fault. Like, he explained it really simply, but I think it just kind of looks a bit fiddly. Like, you can't kind of just get into a flow with it as far as I can tell. But I could be wrong. If anyone has knit anything Entrelac, let me know, because I think it looks really interesting. It definitely adds a bit of texture and dimension, which I find very intriguing, and I really do like the way that it looks. The Lil Lac sweater by Lindsay Deegan was the pattern that I found that even taught me what Entrelac is, because up until then I've never heard of it before, and then I fell down this Entrelac rabbit hole where I was just finding all these patterns, and a lot of them were from the 80s. I feel like this is a very 80s feeling style of pattern for some reason, but I just really enjoy how it looks, and I think it's so fun. You can do different colours for each square. I'm definitely intrigued to try it at some point. I'm not sure when. I feel like it's a bit of a mission, and I feel like it kind of has to be a big jumper. I don't know if it would really work with other things, or I don't know if I would like the way that it looks on like an accessory or something. I feel like if you're going to do it, it has to be a giant, big 80s style sweater, and I don't know if I have the energy for that right now, but at some point I would love to do it. And finally, I've left the scariest thing till last. You could probably guess what it is. It's steeking, and steeking is probably famously the scariest technique. Steeking, if you don't know what steeking is, it is essentially where you leave a space, usually you're knitting in the round, you leave a gap, and that gap is for you to cut into your knitting and basically open up whatever you're knitting in the round. So usually it's when you knit in the round and you want to make a cardigan that's in colour work, because it's easier to knit colour work in the round, and steeking means that you can have a cardigan knit in colour work. But it's really scary. The thought of just cutting through something that you've spent probably months knitting, I can understand why a lot of people are scared of it, and I'm scared of it as well, but it opens up a whole world of possibilities of your knitting that I really, really want to try. Because personally, at the moment, I'm knitting a few cardigans, and they are quite exhausting because you have to knit them flat most of the time if you want to knit a cardigan without steeking. But this means that you can knit in the round, you don't have to do any purling, you can do all your fancy colour work, but you still get to have it as a cardigan. And I love a cardigan. Cardigans are so versatile. I would love to knit more cardigans, and I'd love to knit more colour work cardigans. So maybe I'm gonna have to suck it up and start steeking, because I think we all collectively need to get over this fear, because there's so many cool patterns out there. Let me show you some from my favourites. I typed steeking into my favourites, and so many came up that I didn't even realise were steeked. I just loved the patterns. I literally have so many of my favourites, but I'm going to just show you a few. This is the Acacia Leaf Cardigan by Sedna Yang. This to me is just one of the most beautiful. I think I saw a video on TikTok that was talking about what are your white whale patterns. What are your patterns that one day you would just love to knit, but you just haven't ever worked up the confidence? I feel like this is one of mine. It's just so beautiful. It's so classic, but yeah, it's just absolutely beautiful, and it's steeked. So that's quite scary. And it's also light fingering, which makes it even more scary. Another one is the Camellia Cardigan by Sumin Kim. Again, this is another white whale project of mine. I I love it. I love the colours that it is knitted in the example photo, the white and the blue. It just looks so good. But yes, again, you have to steek, which is scary. And finally, there is the Iris by Trin Annalie, which again is just so beautiful. I feel like this category has some of the most beautiful patterns I've ever seen. And so that in itself is my motivation to try and do steeking and get over my fear. Again, this is light fingering, so it's going to take you a long time. This is one of those patterns that, like, once you knit it, you will have it in your life forever. You will treasure that. You'll pass it down to your children and your future generations because you'll just be so proud of it. And I feel like that's the kind of mood that steeking can get you in. So I need to get into steeking at some point. One of the reasons why I'm a bit scared of it is I don't own a sewing machine. I feel like it's a lot easier if you can sew down the edges. And then I've heard that you can do felting, but I don't know, that freaks me out. I think I would need a sewing machine, which I don't have. If anyone has any techniques, I feel like this video is like a two-way conversation. Let me know if you have any techniques to do with how to reinforce the edges of your steeking that doesn't involve a sewing machine. Let me know. I'd be intrigued to know if there are any. And that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I am running out of memory on my camera, so I'm going to have to leave you. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments any of the things that I've been saying. Let me know. I want to know about how you feel about these techniques. Also, are we enjoying this lighting? I don't know how it feels. Is it too dark in here? I don't know. Let me know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!